Howdy, howdy. Welcome, everyone. We're here today with Loescher and Memo and Invective. We're going to be talking a little bit through the 14-12 meta, the kind of patch changes and how things are. Uh, Memo and Loescher in particular, Invective, please, pitch in as and when you want to on this one. But I know, Memo, you've been playing quite a lot recently. I know that the patch has been on the lighter side, but what's your general feel of the meta at the moment?
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a meta shift with the last patch. We are seeing a lot more reroll, as you can see in the tier list as well. A
Mm.
lot of 3 stars are now more so of an option. That's partially to the change to like all the 2 cost buffs, but also the shop odds for 3 costs got buffed on level 7. So that's a huge change um, that affects the meta right now. And obviously, some of the forecast comps, especially like Ash, got hit quite a lot, and the Duelist comp. So there's quite of a shift, but I feel like everything is kind of playable right now. Even the comps that got nerfed are still very good from like the good spots. And I actually watched the Chinese, the equivalent to the Chinese GC today, and
Hmm.
yeah, I've seen some snipers perform really well. I think it went first, even though it got nerfed quite a lot. I've seen some duelists do really well, but right now the main way to play like forecast is I feel like flexing between AP lines. So like Lilia and Syndra is like what we see the most, and also reroll. Like Zyra reroll is really good. Janna reroll is really good. There's like a new Dragon Lord Amumu comp that's been
Ooh.
popping off out of NA. It's like super low play rate, but it has a crazy high win rate. A lot of the good NA players have been playing it, and they were trying to keep it like low key a bit, so other people don't contest them. That's
Oh,
probably like the
interesting.
winner of the patch. Yeah.
Is it like more Sage than Dragonlord?
You play, yeah, you play
Uh,
two Sage, and you play two Dragonlord. Yeah, like
Jenna looks Jenna looks
yeah,
Amumu, right?
yeah. Janna looks Amumu,
Okay.
Ilaoi, and Diana,
Mhm.
and you play Zyra, obviously.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
from
it's
the
it's the Lux
versatility
with
buff.
Sage comp in this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes.
And it,
Oh, okay,
I
perfect.
think, well, we can discuss the comp later, but it fixes some of the issues like Jenna has naturally just by the way the composition is put together. And
Agreed.
also, I think
Yeah.
some of the issues like Lux
Mhm.
has like initially. So I like it
Okay, I'll have to
concept
look into that
wise.
more. Okay, so if it's if the sort of the general theme is that a lot of stuff is playable, uh, is there in terms of like the overall approach to the game? Then is it, what's the kind of the big picture? Would it be like keeping your items? Would you be sort of trying to keep your options open as much as possible?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see any like generic arguments in the beginning of the game from people that they will default into AP lines. Just because AD lines are very mediocre right now since they nerfed Lee Sin, they nerfed snipers. Um, obviously, Kai'Sa is good out of like Fortune, but without Fortune, it's kind of meh. So most people that have generic arguments will always default into AP lines, and there are some augments that make some comps really good and playable, and even AD lines playable, or even hero augments, right? That's something different. But like if you have to default into like a general game plan or like a game idea, it will always be AP.
Also, to chime in on that, I think like last patch you could do really well with like a general tier 4 game plan, and you play either AD AP, like be kind of flex between it.
Hmm.
And this patch, well, since the default game plan, if you'd like to play this kind of style, will be AP, tier 4 AP, it kind of narrows down. So I think it rewards players in a way that are able to identify good spots for specific comps early in the game and then pivot into these comps quite early, like stage 3, I would say, the latest. Because with all the different reroll comps now in the meta, you need to be able to clearly identify when you can go for which comp. And also with comps like Kai'Sa and Ashe being good situationally, this is like the same like kind of skill set. But if you're like one of these players that just likes to generally, I follow my general game plan and then I just see where I go, then you're kind of like punished a bit. So overall, I think like good knowledge of comps and also a bit of like tempo play is rewarded, because out of tempo you can usually play anything.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I would just say that, when you have a difficult spot in this meta, you are going to have to find a way to play. You are probably going to have to find a way to play reroll, and fortunately, there are a good number of outs. But yeah, I think that if those lines become contested, I would see the lobby get a little ugly. There might be people who are playing like, I don't know, tempo, one of these like reroll boards, Ghostly, Lock Sage, etc. And I will say that if there are a few reroll lines we haven't discussed, I mean, both Syndra and Reapers will often like want to be able to use a Kindred 3. I would say that Kindred 3 is probably much more valuable than Yone 3, and that heading the Reaper board with Yone 3 is like that's almost like not great info. Kindred is just really good, offers a mix of damage, and she is like, I think she just is an insane amount of damage. And then the melee items can end up going on Kayn, or sometimes on Silas if you have a profusion of items. And as to Teemo, it is my impression, based on speaking with some North American players, that I'll just call out JD here. JD's been innovating a lot of Teemo. You can play Teemo from a lot of different spots. You don't have to be playing a standard Teemo Lux board. There are a lot of exalted spots, and you can recognize when to play it, also based on stuff like artifacts and Ink Shadow.
No,
Yeah,
I think between like Bruiser, Warden, and then the Lux spot, there's quite a lot of variety.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to add to that because you mentioned Ornn items. I think there's a lot of Ornn items that are like super broken on certain units, and they just give instant direction.
Mhm.
So we will see a lot of people clicking Portable Fortune to 1 and then Hard Force a line. For example, Nah gets opened up with Ornn items with stuff like vampirism. What's the item called?
Yeah,
Vampiric
Scepter one.
Scepter.
Corrupt Vampiric Scepter.
Yeah, something like
Corrupt.
that. Yeah, and or like even Silvermare, or for example, Bard gets really, really OP if you have Wit's End. So a lot of people will just sack with Wit's End if they have like a bow or a rod on their bench.
Yeah.
And there's like items, like Ornn items that will just make you force a comp and will give you instant direction, which will be very interesting to see, because I think there's like a lot of skill expression in that as well. I think like Lightning Jewel for Teemo is also like instant fast 9. Like Teemo 2 just carries your entire early mid game. And yeah, there's crazy stuff happening with the Ornn items, I feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
Bard is especially, right? Like, I feel like this prismatic on augment, I forgot the name, but
Latent
that's
Forge.
like
Living
Latent
Forge
Forge.
is extremely
Forge.
good. Yes.
Yeah, it's like so insane because you can like between frontline, Wits End, and like some other filler artifacts on other key units in your comp, you can use like anything,
Yep.
Yeah.
and all of them are like extremely potent.
In terms for in terms of the pace of the game, if you're thinking on the casting side or co-streaming, when you see when you see Living Forge, you should expect to get the artifacts earlier, because it's only an 8-turn duration now, in between anvils.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yep.
Also plan for these power spikes. You can kind of
Yeah, exactly.
The spikes are really nice
Like,
because it's 3-5, right?
for example, like a stage 3 Bard comp that gets then in stage 3 the second artifact. This is where it's supposed to get strong. Like probably going 7, rolling for maybe 2 stars. So
Yeah. Like most of the Living Forge people will be weaker till like 3-5, and then they will catch up to the other prismatic augments. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of augments that kind of reward loose streaking, and if you lose streak without having these augments, then usually you won't be able to catch up.
I was actually watching the Tacticians Cup, and something interesting was brought up during the tournament. I don't know when the last time we had a patch like this where like augments decide so much of the game. I think
Which
like
Tacticians Cup and where?
yeah, I mean I don't know, like I feel like augments just completely decide your early mid game, and
Mm.
you don't want to default into like standard boards. I feel like,
But I would argue that just stat-wise, like there are no extreme outliers,
yeah,
like
but
only some. So it's just it's more like these defining augments. Obviously, like these direction defining augments are slightly stronger, especially if you pick them in the correct place. But I would argue that they're actually not, like, it's kind of like players' fault because they're used to defaulting like semi-forcing lines based off augments, and they like kind of still default to do that, even though it might not be correct most of the time.
I'm
think,
not sure.
If healthy is actually a very flexible augment in terms of
Yeah.
the different lines you can play. You can play Kaisa, you can play a variety of including. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, your connection's dropping in and out a bit.
Yeah, so you can play Kaisa, you can play a variety of reroll, and I think you can even flex into a bit of Syndra or Lilia. So
Okay.
it's basically on you to be able to find the different possibilities there, but just because you take it doesn't mean you have to be playing something like Ghostly.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think they are like super narrowed down, but yes, I like there's some like direction giving augments, like I don't know, the Shen hero augment, Grim Harvester, all the hero augments basically that give you so much direction. All the Arn items. There's like certain stuff that like is just worth sacking for, and especially like if the exalted fits and like other circumstances fit, like in encounters. I think hard forcing different lines or like specific lines is very good, since
Yeah.
like I mentioned before, I feel like all the comps that are meta right now are super contested. Like I said, I watched the Chinese Cup today, and like the Ash players were just holding Syndras and Lilias because it was
Oh,
like,
really?
oh, what you gonna do now? Like, oh, I hit my spike here, I'm stable. I will go 9. Sure, I will lose some gold for holding these. But you guys are screwed. Like you don't have any other options here but to roll for Lilia and Syndra.
But then how does that come back to the augment argument? Like, I agree that it's a good play,
No, I
especially
think
if you play
there's
DJ comps.
I think there's arguments that will give you a chance to play different comps that are not Lilia or Syndra. That's my whole argument.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
Syndra comp doesn't even need to hit Syndra 2. Like,
Yeah, I mean, depends if you tempo enough. Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, that kind of goes back into like you kind of got, if you go like for these generic default game plans, you're kind of narrowed down on AP, but there's like lots of different options you can play even without specific augments if you're like aware of the different enablers or aware of your tempo or whatever.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you're playing generic arguments and you play towards these default lines, if you're really contested, you miss your level 8 roll down, like your initial level 8 roll down. People are starting to
Yeah.
hold. It's just a very tough spot to be in. I'm not saying it's impossible to have a high placement with that.
Okay, it's just
but
like I don't get how augments are defining the game so much when
because
you
they
can just
allow
do
you to
this
play
planning.
different type of comps that are not being played right now, like without
Okay,
so
but then
searches.
that's just because we have a lot of augments that basically enable specific
Exactly.
compositions, like
Yeah.
hero augments, for example. What
Yeah.
that's I
let
guess
me
their
see.
purpose,
Let me
right?
see if
So
I
I
can
wouldn't
sum up.
see that as
Just
problematic.
because I think we're kind of sort of repeating the same stuff a bit here. So
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
agree.
So there's so it's a very narrow what people are playing at the top end, being Lily and Syndra, and I think I really like this as like a broad, like, because for casting it's really nice to have a broad point that we can bring in that like leads onto a lot of other stuff. Yeah, it's just that people are looking for ways to play off the beaten path with compositions that aren't necessarily like super crazy, but are playable under the right circumstances. Be that items, be that augments. Which, yeah, I think it's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
In
Because
terms
if
of
you
like,
look at the Because if you look at the tier list, for example, like
Hmm.
most of these comps are locked behind augments, is what I'm saying, right? Like if you look at the tier 1 comps here, there's a few you can play without, of course, but a lot of those are locked behind augments. So
Yeah, it's a scary amount of comps that are locked behind augments.
yeah.
So yes, I guess
I
functionally we've
would
got.
I would only partly agree there.
Yeah.
Like for hero augments, obviously, but for everything else,
I mean, you
especially
can't
with
play
the
story
counters in the game,
without
there
plus
are
one.
different circumstances which allow you to go for it. And then stuff like Teemo Lux 3 or like Bard, sure, like you kind of want your specific artifacts or Exalted or whatever, but if you pick the correct spot, you can play without it.
Okay.
I mean, of course, there's
But-
always exceptions. I'm not denying that.
Oh.
Like,
Well, I
for
mean,
example, story
that's-
is also plus one, right?
Yeah, well, maybe that can be something that can add on as a kind of addendum to that idea, is to look out for players who are managing to make the more unusual comps work without having the other support of like the obvious enablers.
Yeah. Also, I want to mention, like, I want to talk about this Reaper comp. I think the Reaper comp is actually one of the weirdest comps on the patch, because with the rise of these reroll comps, I feel like the Reaper comp has actually a lot of bad matchups. So first of all, I would like to mention that you probably never hit Kindred 3, like super rarely, because there's always a fated player, there's always like someone maybe contesting you on Reaper. So Kindred 3 is most of the time out of the question. So you're stuck on capping out through Yone. And like, for example, Lux completely shits on that matchup. And Zyra, like 3-starring your backliners is pretty good against that unit. Ghostly in general is just good against melees. And Syndra is just a very good matchup as well. So I don't like Reaper as much as people are playing it. I know some arguments and like the comp in general has like decent stats, but I feel like if you don't hit Yone 3-star, you're just stuck on Kane 2, Silas 2, it's really hard for you to get a higher placement in good lobbies. Like, I feel like you're stuck with a 4th or like a 3rd. Even out of like decent spots.
And does the comp like struggle to win anyways? So it's like tempo abuse and
Yeah.
I think that comp will struggle to win unless you have very strong augments, particularly +1 and Grim Harvest. But if you play around with the composition, I feel like going for Yone 3 is potentially bait if you are not in a good spot to do so. Because I don't know if Yone is like I think Yone is quite weak before you 3-star him. And
I agree.
as a result, if you do make him your duo carry, it is quite hard to navigate something like stage 4, where you could have items on Kindred, Silas, or Galio. And I would say that, you know, the comp is not a very rigid comp. I'm pretty sure like there is a fair number of units that you can flex in. I haven't had a chance to look at every single one of the boards that Solo put in his tier list, but like I do think it's not limited to just like 4 Bruiser, 4 Reaper. So
Yeah.
I would say that like even though you are going to be abusing the tempo a little bit, like the board is more expensive than the Reaper boards used to be, and you are going to get a lot of value if you have, you know, a strong level 8.
Where do you stand then towards like rushing 8, rolling for tier 4 units on possibly low economy versus maybe like reading a bit on 7, trying to roll for Yone first and then maybe add like 4 bruises later?
I think the only spots you would roll on 7 first involve like multiple factors of like making it easier for you. You have a lot of Yones, you have particularly strong Yone items. The rest of the lobby is playing reroll in such a way that, you know, their reroll is taking units out of the pool for you and not making your life harder when you play Yone, because Yone does do really well into backline like by accessing backline, but Yone doesn't do really well into something like really capped out Bard, where if Bard has healing and if the board is stable, then Yone dashes to the backline, hits Bard 8 times, dashes back, and nothing has been accomplished.
Yeah, I think that's in general the problem of the comp, because you're losing against Bard, you're losing against like you lose all the backline matchups as well. Like if you're not ahead in curve, if you're not stronger than your opponents by a lot, I think it's just not a
Well,
very
but-
good comp. I think you should almost never rule on 7. Like it should be very, very conditional, because this comp actually lives by having Silas 2 and Galio 2. Yeah, the taunt from Galio is really important, and the extra damage from Silas is also very, very important. So you usually, if you go Yon 3, you will roll him on level 8. And yeah, I think this comp is a bit overrated in my opinion. I think it won't be as successful as it might have been in Ladder so far. In most of the tournaments I watched, I don't see Yon performing or like Reaper performing too well without the arguments. So like defaulting into it is also not the best idea. But if you do have to play AD, I guess that's the go-to line to play, since the duelist line got nerfed by so much.
Yeah, the melee opener is still strong, so
Yeah.
I would just say that like if you're in that position, you probably find yourself playing Reapers more often than not.
Okay.
One more thing to touch on the whole, like it's gonna be a bit worse in tournament point. There's like the specific Yon positioning where you can kind of cluster in the box, so the Yona can't reach your carry.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay, yeah.
And that it used to be popular at the beginning of the set for obvious reasons. So
Yeah.
and hasn't been used since then. But I do expect people to play it again in tournaments if they have Yona in their rotation, and that should also lose them 1 or 2 fights, especially during stage 4 when they haven't really hit yet.
It is very tough though, because you
And with
cannot
Lily and
clump.
Morgana
You
in the
cannot
matchups,
clump
yeah.
at all into half the matchups in the pool.
It's, like, it's
But
just good the
but people
matchups.
can do decisions, and that's why it's interesting, because they can see
Yeah.
which matchups they got and which ones they think they have a strong matchup against. And,
Yeah, for sure. But you just like can't afford to punish yourself either. Like, do you want to get your whole team ulted by Lux? Do you want to get your whole team ulted by Lilia? Like,
I mean,
it's
I
more
don't
so
mind if
positioning you do in the end, right?
like I understand that there's this positioning, but I don't even really see people like I think you should just try to deal with Yone in a different way, because I've never seen someone judge that this positioning is like particularly valuable.
No, it's just like you do it when like 3 people are alive, you know who you're gonna fight. Like that's the use case for it, right? Or like it's a 1v1. That's the use case. Obviously, you're not gonna position like that if you have 3 different or like 2 different people in your rotation.
Also, Pro
I mean, it depends on matchups.
But yeah,
like Kaiser matchups are really good and stuff like that for that. So.
That's cool. I do like the idea of bringing that discussion in, particularly earlier.
Just be aware if people do it on the broadcast, I guess.
Yeah, well, I guess it'll be something to it's having like these little talking points to bring up for a particular competition and just being aware of them, so that when it does come up and it's easier to hit the ground running is really good. All right. Well, with the just to pick you guys' brains really, like on some of the the mainline ones. Could you hit me with like the obvious stuff about Syndra Fated, for instance, like in terms of
I mean, I can
stuff
go
around it.
I think the comp really likes item augments, since you do actually want to have 3 ARI items or like even 3 Kindred items in the end. Like you don't only want to have Syndra as your carry. Like even Ari 2 deals similar damage or like close to as much as Syndra in damage. What's also really big in that comp is having a strong early game, since you do want to play Dryad early on, get the Dryad stacks going, and then play for Dryad in the mid-late game, or even 6 if you have spats. So playing a strong early mid game, super huge. And like mentioned before, Syndra 1 can usually be enough, or can be enough sometimes to go level 9 with. Because you do have a really, really strong level 8 with your fated units being upgraded, even the lower cost ones. And then looking for that set 2 is usually the way how you cap out your board. Since that just provides you with usually a higher fated breakpoint, but also more AoE damage, just another source of of damage. And yeah, I think that comp will be one of the most contested lines on the patch.
But you think
Yeah,
with the... Oh, no, please.
it is a very strong composition. I think it's the composition that's the most likely to win out. You have a lot of scaling. The comp has solutions for virtually every other composition in the game, and I think the positioning is also quite easy. I would say that like people are getting a lot better at playing the late game or stage 4 and onwards with this composition. Which units you can flex in, like Ilaoi Silas, and how to cap out the late game board, oftentimes being like 2 Orns. I think that there's also a little bit of disagreement about how to play this composition from different spots in the early game, because you do need to solve the problem at some point of which mana items are we going to make, and can we get Shred online. So if you are in the early game and you have a bunch of fated units, but you don't have those resources, you need to figure out whether you're willing to open fort for them. And I've heard it suggested that even if you had like the units ready to play on your stage 2 board, you would potentially want to be sacking for your stage 2 and maybe even stage 3 carousel. But then comes the other question, which is at what point are we actually willing to stop losing? And if we lose something like 5 rounds or something like 8 rounds, we're probably like, what are the chances that we just lose 10 rounds? And if we lose 10 rounds, then isn't the only option to be hitting the strongest board possible at level 8 and to be forced to win out. So I think that there are different like levels of risk appetite that people have towards playing that composition, but it was popular among high level players for some time to treat the line as an open fort line because the items can be so good.
Yeah, see, that's why I said I like item augments in this comp. I have generally like a different understanding of how this comp works because it is so strong. Like all the one costs are so fucking strong, and the kindred as well. I like either item manipulation augments like Pandora or Component Anvil, or just full items in general, since you can solve all the issues of finding Shiv, finding Morello, finding your tank items, finding your multiple mana items for your carries. But yeah, obviously you can open into it. It is just very high risk, high reward kind of. I wouldn't even say high reward because it's like more so medium reward, I guess. But if you can like stabilize on level 8 and go 9 and find your set 2 and stuff, you can cap very high. That's correct. Because Asia and set are just so incredibly strong in the late game. But my general understanding of the comp is more so you want to play tempo, you want to play strong early game, and just click all the item augments.
To add on that, it's a bit like the same way the whole set. So there are oftentimes very strong compositions like default lines, which require some specific items. You could also see it on previous patches with bows and ash compositions, for example, which often leads you to at least sack like the first 3 fights minimum, just to get first pick on the first carousel and then see where you're going from that. But if you like commit to like these like 5-10 losses, which Invective just mentioned, it's going to be really risky if you're missing your Rodan then, right? Because while you kind of secured your items, but you haven't secured your units yet necessarily, especially if you're rolling with like 2-3 people with the small pool size. You can always like see sometimes people just randomly die in that sense because they like committed to like get the strong items to potentially win out, sacrifice HP for a bit higher cap, and then they just get Omega punished by just bad Rodons. And so for the broadcast, I would think it's like quite worthwhile to keep track of these people that actively go for the higher cap by sacking and see if they get rewarded or maybe get punished for it.
Yeah, and to be clear, I do think items afford that composition like a lot of power, if you've seen someone play Syndra from something like Living Forge and they know which artifacts to pick, I think the comp is insanely strong. But at the same time, like, the comp uses a ton of augments very well. If you've also ever seen a Syndra player with Faded Crest, Baboom, and Jewel Lotus on the same board, as I had happen twice to me over the weekend, like, it's very, very unpleasant because your composition just loses. It doesn't matter if you have 3 awesome augments for a different composition. Most of the time, the highest level augments for the Syndra composition will just run you over.
Cool. That sounds good. All right, nice. If that's all we've got to say about that, then I guess the same sort of thing for Lilia. If there's similar stuff to bring to the forefront.
I mean, I would say Lilia is Syndra with more risks because you need to hit more and it's more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say you need a lot more legendaries. Like Wukong and Rakan actually matter a lot if you hit them or not. Like if you find any of those on level 8, you feel amazing. But also I feel like Lilia is a bit more actually I wouldn't say more, but also very item dependent. I feel like you want Morgana items and Lilia items, so again, item augments is something you want to have, or like item encounters. Anyway, where you can find like 3 tank items and Morgana and Lilia items. Since these units synergize so well and both hit the backline, it's really important to have both of these units itemized, so you can actually one-shot backlines. And there's some very interesting Lilia positionings. I don't know if you guys know, but like the second spot or like even the third spot from the outside on the board can be really good hexes for like immediate cast on the enemy carries. So there's
interesting.
like some tricky positioning with that. Like I wouldn't be surprised if good players can abuse that. Because that's where the strength lies in this comp, in my opinion. You're just very, very prone to one-shot backlines, or like not one-shot, but like within the first 3 casts of your Lilia and your Morgana kill the backline.
Yeah. I don't know if I agree that this comp is just like strictly worse than Syndra. I think that
No, I wouldn't say it like that.
like it is
From a
expensive.
safety point of view.
It is expensive, and I think it's the hardest line on the patch to play. But it
No, yeah.
also has quite a high reward in terms of not just positioning, but also proper itemization for your level of mana generation, and like being able to cap out very high when you do hit legendaries and when you don't necessarily have the best augments in the game, but you were able to like generate, enough econ for level 8 and keep going from there.
No, I agree with you. Like you also have like your level 9 is so rewarding. And like in general, you can do so much with the comp because you're not locked to one composition. Like for example, Memo said like you want to pair like Morgana with the Lilia to like kill the backline, but you don't even need Morgana in some cases.
Yeah, that's true.
So like if you hit like an early wave, for example.
I think Morgana is just out of favor in general. Like I don't know
I don't
how
like
the
her
meta
much,
is
yeah.
shaping up in EU, but I legitimately have not seen people prioritize the Sage version of Lilia since the Invokers became a little stronger with the anti-buffs. Like
Yep.
I think the Sage version is definitely still playable, but like I forgot which of you said it, but I do really think that you want Morgana items so you get the synergy of them both hitting the same backliners.
The problem with the Sage version for me is you want items and you also want specific legendaries for it to like really work. Like if you don't have Wukong, the whole comp just feels awkward, for example.
Agreed.
And then like adding Rakan again adds like, so much value to your board. So I would say like Sage probably is one of the highest caps, but very hard to get online. But that's like what it kind of goes to into the direction what you said, right? It's like one of the hardest to pilot comps, and I would agree there. So yeah,
Yeah,
hard, higher risk, a bit harder to play, but also potentially higher reward.
I think what's really interesting is that you share some of the units with the Syndra bot. Like you're like, whenever I play Syndra, it's not unusual I hold Ilaoi and Nico, because you can just play like 4 Arcanists sometimes.
Yep.
For a mid game, like especially if you carried Ari through the mid game, it's very common to hold these units. So the transition into Lilia is also quite easy, and they use quite similar items. Something Invective mentioned that's really interesting is knowing the mana breakpoints. So like if you have Shojin on your Lilia, you want 2 Invoker. If you have Blue or Adaptive as your mana item, you want either none or 4 Invoker. Obviously, it doesn't hurt to have 2 Invoker, but it's kind of useless for your Lilia. So there's some interesting stuff you can adapt to depending on your itemization. But also, I think what makes this comp good is the flexibility between the best default line, which is Syndra, in my opinion, and the unit, but also the shared items.
Yeah, it does make things pretty
So just to
easy.
check I got that right, was it for Shojin it was 2 Invoker and 4
Exactly.
blue buff for 4? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, there's more information that I am not allowed to divulge.
Okay. Yeah, no, don't say anything that's gonna
So
give
map
away stuff
pointer
shouldn't
for
be.
you, Peter.
There's also some attack speed breakpoints that are very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Exactly. Like guard breakup or like 20% attack speed, for example, on 4. But like on general, without any other stuff added, Invoker adds mana every 3 seconds.
Mm.
So in 3 seconds you will do 2.25 auto attacks. Wait, I'm too. Never mind, I'm too drunk. But yeah, checks out like the Invoker breakpoint on 3 auto attacks was like 15, 15, 50 with Shojin, right? And then you get 550 cast.
exactly.
Okay.
And then, well, obviously you only need like less mana in that sense, or like other breakpoints. If you get the 20 mana every 3 seconds, so then the blue buff works out like auto cast.
And sorry, just to go back to the positioning stuff, because it does seem like it's one of the comps that's got more going on there. Because you guys have a much better idea than I would. In terms of like counter positioning, like how much is the comp strength dependent on how the other person positions against it?
I don't know if this is too simplistic, but I think that you can generally tell if somebody is positioning for Lilia or not positioning for Lilia, because if they're not positioning for Lilia, their carry will be in a bit of a clump, and like I think you can just get your carry rolled. Sometimes when you're on the same side as Lilia, you have to be careful of where your front line is going, because the front line can sometimes give the Lilia AI a path to ult both your frontliner on the side and the carry that's in the back line on the same side. But and I think that's also where the like backline hex positioning for Lilia can come into play. But in general, since they improved the AI, you just really need to avoid clumping your backline.
Yeah. One big thing, or like the most important unit to position, in my opinion, is Silas. That unit is an absolute beast when it comes to griefing the enemy's positioning, because you can actually like manipulate, like for example, enemy set. Like if you jump behind the enemy set, he will just jump like ult your Silas into his own backline, and sometimes even Silas then kills the backline. I mean, there's some crazy stuff that can happen, and also trenchcoat Silas is something we will see like very often in the GC, I would assume. Every time someone gets trench coat, they will usually play towards that Silas. And then also they will go for Protector's Vow, because they have like trench coat and Vow have really good synergy. And the Vow will basically make the Silas instacast. So that's something to look out for when positioning or like when casting. Because like I said, like just jumping behind the enemy backline right away in a fight can do some crazy stuff.
Okay, cool. Are there any other sort of things you think about with playing with or against Lilia?
I mean, you definitely want to be like I think you would prefer to be on the same side Lilia tends to be able to target the opposite side more efficiently. And I think that, it's going to go case by case, but sometimes Lilia boards with more invokers have less frontline. So that is a situation where you would be able to maybe take advantage if you are playing something like a melee composition. You could look for a wrap. And the higher level invoker boards, I think, will tend to revolve around being able to stall for many more casts. So you'll have to look for how they're able to achieve that or how people play around that.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. All right, cool. Well, assuming that's all said on that, then I'll pull up the Sage comp on screen just to so we got a point of reference here. So I guess, sorry, I realize I should be sharing my screen to you guys as well, just so you can see what I'm doing.
I've been quiet this whole time, but I was about to come off mute to say, "What screen? I can't see anything."
Aha!
Hi, Bertrand.
Hello there. Apologies for. I didn't want to jump in. It's good discussion, and all of you have a significantly higher elo than me, so I want to make sure I'm giving you all the space.
Not me. Haha!
IP are fake. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry.
But yes, well, let's talk a bit about this. I guess this is like one variation of what sounds like there's a few different variations in here, but like,
Oh yeah, I made a lot of research to this comp, so I can give my 2 cents on it, I guess.
wonderful.
So in general, Ilaoi is a much better item holder than Amumu, but the problem with that is Amumu is much less contested since Ilaoi is getting played in Ghostly Reroll, it's getting played in a lot of different comps. So Amumu is hittable since there's no more sniper, or like very rarely we'll see sniper bots, and no other comp really uses Amumu besides this one. So Amumu 3 with items is obviously better than Ilaoi, but if you're gonna stay on 2 stars, you wanna give your items to Ilaoi. And
Okay.
backline wise, Lux is actually not ideal as a carry, unless you have boarding point or like some specific augments. What's performing much better is Zara as the main carry, and then even Jenna as your second carry. Lux is more so the CC and like the extra damage just for your entire team. Like it's just good to play her and roll her as well. But the other two are actually performing much better with 3 items. But honestly, whichever one you're gonna 3-star first, you're probably gonna itemize as well, since you do want to push level eventually with this comp. So you don't want to roll too much. And also something important to note is since the 2-cost odds got nerfed on level 7, since they buffed it for 3 costs, they took it away from 2 costs. So you do want to roll a lot on 6 and then push 7 and 8 quite quickly. So like my short notes to this comp.
That's a really good
Uh,
point.
Well, I've seen people say that you roll on 6 for your carries and then you roll again on 7 for your front line.
Yeah. Like
But
if you
it
can
doesn't-
3-star
like,
them,
it's-
then you can.
Yeah, but I would say it's not, especially with the front line, it's not so simple, and you would have to go game by game.
Yeah, for sure. Like you don't you rarely go 3-star front lines, I feel like. Unless you have like ticket or 2 for 1, something like that. But I don't think those augments are
Mhm.
particularly good in this comp anyway.
Okay.
I've seen some people say ticket is like an indicator to go for this, but
Yeah,
I
ticket
think
is
I think Ticket is just insane. You just pick Ticket when you are playing any semblance of a comp that can be rerolled, and you will do quite well.
yeah, ticket is just the type of augment that is just spot dependent, right? If you have a lot of gold,
Yeah,
it gets
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
better, right? So if you have econ region, any indicators of having economy increased, obviously ticket has a lot more value. But I would not click in a standard game ticket then full open fort into this comp. I don't think that's like the. I mean, if you don't have anything else, sure, go for it. But I don't think that's the best game plan.
I mean, you don't need to full open with tickets.
But on 2-1,
Necessarily.
I think it might like oftentimes be your best plan. If you don't have a playable board, then
Yeah.
full open ticket
Like-
is, I think, really strong. But arguably, arguably the easiest comp to play with full open ticket is just 6 Arcanists, as opposed to rerolling the Lux Sage board.
Okay. Interesting. Why do you think that?
I think that there's a little bit more of a frontline backline interaction that scales with items from the Sage comp, and the Arcanist comp. If you have enough damage on a Zoe, you tend to do really well, and you don't need as much in the way of items, which could come from augments, which could come from just like being in the game longer. But you'll be more likely to stabilize on 3-2, and the rolling is quite simplified, where ultimately you just want Zoe and a frontliner. I think that is extremely strong. I think that if you're in the open for prismatic ticket line, you probably go towards that. But there's no real shame in going for this Sage board.
Okay.
And the Arcanist line is really strong. I don't know if it's on this tier list, but like,
I think maybe it's tier 2.
I think
yes, it is.
I think if you are able to play prismatic ticket, like, this Arcanist board is so strong. I think the only thing that is comparable is going to be Bard. So those two are like probably the best prismatic ticket lines.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, Zoe 3 is just insane. I just don't like 2-1 ticket into 3 cost. I prefer 2 cost, but yeah, you can roll on 6 your Zoe as well and your entire board and stabilize off of that. So I guess it's fine.
Yes, I suppose you're waiting quite a long time, aren't you, to really make use of the augment if you do it that early.
Yeah, and you don't want to like put too much gold into XP instead of like rolling, since that's less value for like having ticket. But I mean, of course, like can work and can be really good as well. Like I said, you can just roll on 6 and that's fine.
In terms of like, so I'm assuming that I haven't got very much experience with the competition, but in terms of how it plays, I'm guessing it's relatively standard front to back kind of stuff. There's no like shenanigans going on there, apart from
I mean,
guess
Lux
Lux.
Yeah, Lux is hitting enemy backlines. So being opposite side of Lux will be detrimental, right? Like that's gonna be the entire minigame, the positioning minigame basically. Especially if you're playing like a Irelia 1 as a carry, which can happen, right? Like if someone hits an Irelia on level 8, yeah, it will be very critical to be on the correct side against Lux, because not only does she deal a lot of damage, but also she can stun, depending on how many units she hit before that. And if she stuns, you're just losing out on so much damage. So yeah, being on the correct side is super important against that unit.
I like, this is a bit of a sidebar and more to do with casting, but I don't know how to make like, when side is the most important thing for positioning, I don't find it particularly exciting, and I'm wondering if like you have a way of making that more interesting.
Like the problem for me is with that whole thing is that it like oftentimes it comes down to luck, right? And then it's
Yeah, it is a bit of a gamble, and
yeah, like because like if you know you can't out APM your opponent, then which most people would assume, right, that they're like same speed or comparable, then you would just like randomly assign it at the last second, and then it's more, well, it's not exciting, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I think so. That's something I talked actually about with Peter before. I think what's always interesting in a cast is not knowing what's gonna happen. And even after being on the, like, for example, the Lux being on the opposite side of the main carry, which is good for the Lux, you can still paint a picture of, will that be enough to win that fight? Or like ask these questions, like these open-end questions. Because that's basically like you're trying to get the person watching to interact with that thought. And I think that's the only thing you can do. Because if it's really obvious that you won the fight, then there's nothing more to it, right? But sometimes, even if you are on the correct side, you can still lose with looks, obviously.
Yeah, I would maybe in
I
that
mean, it's not an
situation.
auto-win, right, if you're on the right
Oh, sorry,
side.
Lush, what were you saying?
No, it's whatever.
I was just thinking that the one thing I could think of in that kind of circumstance would be trying to figure out which unit needs to die for Lux to start hitting onto worthwhile targets. That would be what I would probably be looking for if the positioning goes against them.
Get your observer to draw red lines over the screen.
Honestly, so you can, if you right-click a unit in TFT, it comes up with the info panel, but it also puts a little highlight around them on the board. So you can actually sort of do that. It's not really a big enough effect to be that worthwhile.
I think it's the range, right? And I'm not quite sure how it would work with the Lux spell.
You might be able to do it with the range as well. It's when you right-click, there's
I
like a
think the
little
range-
highlight around them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the range signifier, that's not gonna work as well with the ability, but at least show you the attack range, see if she's gonna stay in that corner. But even then, that's that becomes an observer question, as Peter's kind of saying, is a little bit tricky sometimes.
Yeah, I think there's a world in which we had telestrators for TFT casting, so people would just like throw in like bits of that during rounds. That'd be a cool thing.
Truthfully, you will need like an extra person just for that, and it's too expensive. But yeah,
It's not very technically feasible, unfortunately. But I think it would work if you had the ability to like freeze the footage from a caster point of view and then just draw on it and then resume the footage. But okay. Okay, well, I imagine there's some of the same stuff with Teemo Lux, as there is with Sage Lux. Is there anything materially different to bring up sort of discussion-wise there?
and I think there's more priority on frontline in the Teemo Lux composition. Because what this comp is actually good at is like slowly chipping down the backline. And that's like kind of how you win the fights. So it's more important that you stall out by comparison, like a Jenna or a Zara with like some lucky stray shots, or even then the Lux in the other composition is more likely to just straight up like out DPS. And I don't think with Teemo that's the kind of like fight you're looking for.
Does this comp have like different flexibility in like? Does it have any variety in frontline? I feel like you can play different frontlines in this spot. It's not really dependent on.
Frontlines are pretty flex. Like if you like upgraded to give like Galio, you're probably gonna itemize them, right? And then screw the ones.
Yeah.
Well, you will default like your 4-1 setup.
Mm-hmm.
But would you consider playing it with other things in there, like Bruiser and shit?
I've heard a little bit about like the Bruiser reroll, but when it comes down to it, 3-star Bruisers are not substantially stronger as frontline goes, unless you're playing something like Tom Kench, which I don't know if you have that much of a reason to do so.
I would say like going for Bruisers is more of a you either high roll the tier 4 units or you hit the Teemo quite early and then you just level 4 tier 4 units.
Yeah. Or like maybe it makes you Ink Shadow or something like that.
Oh yeah, if you have.
That can work as well.
What's the until one called again? Sorry.
Toxin.
Toxin is so broken on Teemo, so yeah, if you get that, that can be a good reason to play it.
Okay.
But yeah, like for that composition, I feel like you prioritize your like Morello Blue on Teemo and then probably a shift on Lux. But you do want to invest into frontline items before like capping out on the backline items.
For sure.
At least in comparison to like if you carry a Zyra, you want to get 3 items Zyra ASAP, and Teemo can kind of sit on like 2 items.
Yeah.
I was just gonna
Okay.
say quickly, would it be red or blue? Because I've seen people like slamming that to get rid of the excess bows and tiers you might find in this composition, and just have red be your anti-heal, blue be your continuous Teemo cast.
Oh,
Obviously, you
yeah,
can
you
find
can do that. You can do
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's I just like
Obviously,
say
if you find
usually
no, you first.
no. It's that usually you're still like just mark wise, blue Morello would be the most optical one, so you kind of
Mhm.
look for that. But if you get the red buff, if you get the adaptive helm or whatever, and you kind of need to slam it for tempo, you will do it, and you won't feel that bad about it.
Also fair. Also, as already mentioned on the sheet, if you find Blighting Jewel, that sort of shifts things around a lot too.
In
Mhm.
terms of what this comp is good or bad against, like my initial assumption would be that it's if you're playing a composition where it takes a while to kill everything, I would presume you would be weak against stuff like Reaper and Lydia that's gonna actually directly hit the Teemo. Would that be correct?
I think that's actually one of the better matchups because Lux just can stun the Kayn and then like the Kayn can't play the game.
Okay.
I think the hard matchups is the matchups where your front line is dying quite quickly. Like when your opponent has a lot of burst damage, like Syndra comes to mind, right? Where you can't really out-sustain those fights because they're quite quick on your backline.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree specifically about Reapers being bad. If the Reaper comp has enough sustain or durability,
Yeah.
or if the positioning goes a certain way, like Lux isn't guaranteed to stun Kayn. But I would say that like either you are able to have so much sustain on one unit that Teemo is just incapable of killing it, or uh or you have so much burst that the Teemo isn't capable of dealing enough damage over time. So I agree
I
in
think
general.
like some matchups also depend on itemization. I would
Like
say.
if you're into fine vintage duelist, I would imagine the team was not very strong.
Yep. Would agree.
Oh, because of how quickly my vintage duelist would tear through, do you mean?
More like you just can't deal with the Lee Sin unless you have a blading jewel.
Yeah, you're struggling really against these melee type carries. If you like, for example, like Garen is something I think of as well, like story champion, right? That would be
Yeah,
probably a hard matchup. If you like, sure, if you look stuns the Garen permanently, like that can be still winnable, but these are like more the type of matchups you're gonna struggle against because your single
yeah.
target damage kind of sucks.
Garen's a little bit different in that I think if you have your 3-star frontline, he takes a much longer time to kill them. But if you are only on 2-star frontline, the Garen matchup might be impossible.
Yeah, or like Yorick. Like I think of Yorick as like an impossible matchup since he will just out-sustain that Teemo damage pretty easily.
I've seen Yorick go down to Teemo.
Oh.
I wasn't expecting it, but I've seen it.
I mean, it always depends on spikes and how strong the other person is compared to the other. Like, obviously, like
Yeah.
thematically, though, it makes sense that Yorick would win that probably. More
Like
often than not.
I just think I have a VOD from a scrim specifically where I end up like being able to defeat a reasonably strong Yorick player with a team board that's not quite complete.
Okay.
I guess
I mean,
are you looking
I
there
can see
for
that as well.
if Teemo is able to clear out the back line while still having a front line alive?
Yeah. I mean, I think Teemo's win condition is just being able to spread damage over time, and that performs like really well into maybe Ashe or Lilia. As long as Teemo's alive, you oftentimes have a gunblade, so you know you do deal with like backline casters reasonably well, and you will spread your cast, and over time the total damage will be much greater than the enemy carry's total damage. But if the damage spread isn't good, or if you lose too much in the early part of the fight, then you will probably lose out.
Interesting.
And like if you have a lighting jewel, everything is different.
Yeah. I agree. If you're buying Jewel, you can just chill.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of sort of trying to present that as a sort of a this would probably be something I'd do like more specifically with you if I was casting with you, like just because I feel like you'd be more comfortable with this kind of thing. But like talking about like the flow of the fight and the idea of like trying to find the point where the Teemo's hit enough units, assuming he's got Hextech Emblem, where like the threshold has been hit of there's enough damage coming through, there's enough healing coming through that the front line is going to hold.
That's exactly why I also mentioned Syndra, right? Because even if you have a lot of Gunblade healing for your entire team, the Syndra has so much single target burst damage that she will be able to kill those units, even if you're trying to heal against them. I think those matchups are just very rough, especially if the Syndra has some sort of healing and won't die to the Teemo. It's just an impossible matchup, pretty much. But yeah. Obviously, these are like the themes. This all can change depending on augments, items, and the units that you hit.
Okay.
Do you actually? I can share my screen if you want to look at like an example of maybe a non-standard
please.
Teemo board. This is a VOD I have from the aforementioned scrim, where I mean, there's like
Are you okay if
two
I
healthy
move your
heavy
screen
hitters
on the recording?
Sorry, yeah, that's fine.
All right, sorry, just let me do that a second then. There we go. Yep.
So I was originally planning on playing something like Ghostly this game, but I figure with my items, I have a lot of Teemos. Too healthy is playable with Teemo, and Gnar and Janna are exalted in this game. So I think that this is a reasonable spot to pursue Teemo, even if I won't have the strongest frontline of all time. Like, I'll have a lot of health on all my units, and that helps me stall for long enough that it's easy to win the fight. And then heavy hitters is probably just the best generic augment I could hit at the end of the game here. Too healthy gives all my units a ton of HP and makes sure that they all reach this breakpoint basically even on 2-star. And
Okay, nice.
I mean, this game was basically a stomp up until the point where I don't know what Akanara is playing. He's playing Ashe. So like this is just an extremely strong Ashe board with virtually perfect augments. But I hit a Kaisa 3 and win the game. Other than that though, I think that like this is just one example of where you can make use of a variety of other buffs to enable the Teemo to do its job. Because
Okay.
Exalted will add extra damage, and having a mixture of augments such as these will allow you to meet the durability conditions.
This is actually there's some sort of I think it's actually quite similar to this, but something that Dicey posted at the start of the set. Especially when you're Toxin here, like it's really easy for you to fit Ink Shadow since you are playing the Kaiser, right?
Yeah.
And the Aatrox. So yeah, I like this board a lot. I think that's a really good variation. Very good with 2 healthy, a lot of 2 costs. And yeah, like I mentioned, if you have Ink Shadow, like a good Ink Shadow item here, that's just amazing.
Okay, nice.
Great.
All right. How's everyone? I know this has been going on. We've just passed the hour mark. So how's everyone feeling? They don't need a break or anything? Like,
I think I'm just gonna tap out soon. I want to play some scrims or not scrims, but like I want to prep for this weekend.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming along and pitching in on this stuff. All right. Well, I mean, I guess we kind of covered a lot of the main things. I suppose the Zyra comp is probably the main one, which I'd want to try and include before wrapping on the meta talk stuff. Does anyone have any strong feelings on that one?
Went a bit down in priority, I feel like, since the Dragonlord Amumu comp came out and the Vertical Story was also a lot better, or like not better, but like getting played a lot more.
I'll say this, like it's a good comp. It has lots of options, but it's also very contested on different fronts.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one thing that also makes it a little bit more complicated is that the changes to odds that were mentioned previously, like I feel like most of the time on this comp you wanted to go to level 7 so you could fit 4
Yes.
Ghostly. And
Indeed.
that means that you may not have as easy a time of hitting Zyra 3. So
Mm.
being able to navigate like when you level to 7 is going to be very important if you find yourself playing this competition. And one thing that makes it much easier is if you have +1 Ghostly.
Okay.
This is also something if you see like people trying to prioritize Senna, it's like the same thing because it allows you to roll on 6 while still being strong with the 4 ghostly threshold.
Nice.
This is like the idea behind it.
Okay, cool. Anything else to say about that one, or should we call it a day on that portion of proceedings?
I guess if you have not had a lot of experience seeing the sport in the past, Zoe 3 is much stronger than Zyra 3.
Mhm.
Like, I think
I-
Zyra 3 is the mid-level of this comp. And Zoe 3 is insane.
Also, another reason why I usually prioritize level 7 and roll then because you can see what you hit and then adapt.
Oh,
But if you
nice.
hit like 6 Zyras on 7, like you do have to realize that in this patch it's like it is significantly harder to hit the 3 last Zoes or the 3 last Zyras.
Hmm.
Like I don't know. To me it feels confusing.
Yeah, I feel like you're rarely gonna play Zyra with this comp now. It's just more like Zoe, and if you high roll the Zyra quite early on, you just can itemize her.
Yeah.
All right, cool. We'll call it a wrap on the meta discussion thing too. Thank you, Vective, for coming in and for Protroid as well. Let's remember, how are you guys doing energy wise? Do you feel like you've got enough in the tank to talk about the GSC 3 players, or
Yeah, I'm
are
done.
you up gas?
No, it's fine. I just no, I can't really say anything about like current form or anything because I
Okay.
haven't really seen a lot from
Oh yeah.
most guys.
Well, all right. Let's just I'll bring it across the public player list onto here.
Okay. I'm gonna mute. Maybe I'll listen to a little bit of the discussion, but thank you for having me.
Thanks for
Oh,
being
thank you
here.
for coming along.
Yeah.
It's been great. Thank you.
I'm gonna stay here as well for a little bit, but again, I'm deferring to a lot of you guys. This is also just me trying to learn as well.
I mean, like,
Okay.
I think we're probably gonna discuss specifics of certain EMEA players, so I don't know how interesting that will be for you.
I'm a big old
Yeah.
nerd, is the nice way I'm gonna
Oh,
say it.
that's nice. I mean, feel free to stick around. I'm just saying ahead of time.
No,
what
it's
you can
cool. And while I
expect.
don't think I'm going to be doing any alternate lobbies for EMEA anytime soon, it's still good for me to kind of keep an eye on things myself.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, in terms of, I guess I'll do. Where am I keep some notes for stuff? I'll put some notes into Notepad, and I guess I'll just post them to the server afterwards. But in terms of players that you guys are particularly interested in, or like want to kind of bring to the forefront, who are you looking at here most?
Oh, that's the hard hitting questions directly. I can have. Should I leak this? Loescher, did you see the Discord messages from Zaza? Wait, you actually responded.
I mean,
actually,
like,
so-
did you see his final performance during the TRC?
Yeah, he went like 8, 7, 7, something like that.
Went 4-7-8-8-8-8. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then he wrote into Discord, "Yo, I'm not playing any games till GC starts." So I think I'm down to I'm sorry, Zaza's my friend, but I'm down to count him out for this one. But maybe he does maybe he pulls off a crazy performance.
It does seem to be the set where there's a few different people who've just kind of like don't seem like they're fully online for the set, or just.
I mean, this is the same every set. Everyone will have sets they like or dislike, and everyone will have sets where they have like a bit more time or whatever, so they can actually like invest in the game and learn it. And obviously, the more invested you are in the set, the more likely you are to stick to it. So.
Yeah. I think
And I think
my
for him it was just like he doesn't enjoy the set that much. And then
yeah, I think
he's done.
there's some very very crazy players or like people I'm expecting a lot from, like
Okay.
Kubikson. I think Kubikson has made a name for himself the last few sets. Like he performed so well, basically since the beginning. But I think now he's just coming more so into his prime. Like should not forget this guy won the Polish TRC when he was like 15, I think. So like he's aging and he's learning stuff still, which is crazy. And at the beginning of the set, I remember that this guy was just, I don't know, miles ahead of everyone, like basically running circles around everyone else on ladder. And yeah, I think that's like one of the potential new goats, I would say, like someone that
Okay.
could get there for sure, like has the potential for it.
That's high praise.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's like in the last few sets probably the best player, like improvement wise. And a returning face is Dysik. Obviously, back for the set and has been performing pretty well. I don't know, with Dysik it's always so weird. Like I have so much respect for him as a player. He has his own weird takes and sometimes he will just not perform. I don't know what it is exactly, but I have
I
so much
think he's a
respect
bit
for
too
him.
stubborn.
Yeah, he's very stubborn in his own opinions and his thought processes. But like,
Like
I don't
he,
even count that as a negative for him because usually he's right. Like more often than not, he's right. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
like the thing is like you can have correct assessment about specifics of the game and be like very knowledgeable about the game, but if you like have to apply it in a real game, it can still be like useless.
Yeah.
And like I think like he's a bit stubborn in his opinions, and which I like his assessment is usually correct, but then he's kind of like too focused towards what he knows and what he thinks is good, and then he like kind of tunnel vision sometimes.
Mhm.
Like even though
Okay.
like generally I would say just like from a perspective of who in like our region understands the game the most, he would be like one of the highest ranked players for me personally.
Definitely, yeah.
Like for example, if you like, I would say like for me like the real great players are the ones I take these players, I throw them into like a set complete blind, they know nothing, and they would just be able to perform because they understand the game. And
Yeah.
Desik is one of those players for me.
I agree 100%. There's some prototypes of players that just know and like understand, and there's just some players that are just really good at like memorizing lines, knowing what's good, like learning what's good from other people, and then just executing really well mechanically. I think there's like two different types of TFT players. I feel like, and Dysik is definitely one that innovates. Like same another person I would throw out there is Scipios, but I don't think he made it, right?
No, he's not
Not
played
yet.
any of
No,
the
he
set.
was like he didn't really get into the set, and then he was a bit late, and then I think he never
yeah.
really. Like the thing is, like he's kind of dependent on being able to do like his own thing in a way.
Hmm.
And if he's like late on the uptake, if he doesn't have like deep knowledge, it becomes very hard to execute that on a high level. So I think that's where he starts to struggle, and you could kind of see it with the set, where he just was late on starting, and then also never really committed to playing it like that much.
Yeah,
I have to think
And
that some of that's going to come from having top-8 worlds as well.
definitely.
Like that's, I think that takes a lot of time to
I'm
process.
gonna be honest. Like Skip was like his performance was tending downwards for some sets before the worlds, like last set where he made worlds. It was just like that it clicked for him there, and then his playstyle, which is very unorthodox, worked really well
Hmm.
in a specific scenario.
Definitely.
So I would say like, well, he's still like, I would still say he's like a great player because like for my metric, right? You take this guy, you throw him into a set blind, and he will be able to perform. So I think he's good. But then in the current environment where it's so important that you actually well, learn a lot, or just study a lot, and then also be able to apply knowledge from like different sources than your own brain. He's not one of the greatest players at doing that, I think, and that's why kind of like his performance can be a bit bumpy.
Yeah. There's some other interesting players that are worthy to highlight. I think Gluteus is a name that has been
he's
around
been
for a
doing
long
really
time.
well.
Yeah, he's been completely destroying on the ladder, I feel like set. And I think I reached even up to 1.6 KLP. I don't know exactly, actually. He's been doing really well. I mean, he won set 5 regionals, went to Worlds. I don't know exactly what he finished. I think he went like, I think he was final lobby as well.
He
yeah.
was
Definitely an older
yes,
phase, but
no, he got to 9th, so he would have been just outside.
oh yeah, 9th. Yeah, but which is also just a crazy good performance. I actually know him quite well, and I feel like when he's invested into TFT, he's super good. Like definitely potential to be one of the best. And I feel like he has been investing a lot of time into TFT lately, and yeah, it's been showing up for him. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a player to look out for, definitely.
I think he's one of these guys, like he can, he's really good at playing unconventional stuff out of tempo, but he's also really good at recognizing when his spot is just not as good, and he will just sack to play something that's good or broken. So he knows when to go for which like play style, and I think that's like his biggest strength, and that makes him like very versatile.
You know what's actually crazy with this guy? So the first 2 TRCs I played as well, and he actually won both of them very convincingly in the finals. He completely destroyed everyone by like a lot. Back then the scene was a lot smaller, and the German players were not as good, like compared to like EMEA. But he actually, like, his preparation is crazy good. Something he showed me what he does before entering a tournament, like how to prepare. He actually screenshotted basically like every comp, put it on like a big map, had like crazy information to like every detail of every comp, what counters which comp, and how to position towards certain comps. Like he had a
like
whole
conspiracy
spreadsheet.
board kind of stuff.
Yeah, he had a crazy, like, his preparation is probably one of the best I've ever seen, because it's not like reading through stats, but he's actually noting down a lot of stuff, and what's it called, like a mind map kind of, like doing it like graphically as well. And I think that's one of his big strengths. I think he prepares really well if he wants to, and yeah, I think that makes him very dangerous.
I think there are certain player types that profit from different types of preparation. Like for me myself, like I'm also like just looking at stats is not as useful for me personally, because it's more like how is everything connected and identifying when to go for which line. And I would say Gluteus also tends to go into the direction.
Yep.
That does, yeah. I think that's how, as much as
like, and I would say, yeah, and then I would say they're like these guys that really like optimize for stats, and they go for like highest cap out of their spot. And for them, like, then this type of prep would be useless or not as good, because they are more, for them it's more important to be able to like build the optimal board from what they're given, like more forcefully go towards like very tailored specific compositions.
So it's more like, yeah, he's more focused towards wide play than narrow play.
Yes. And usually that kind of aligns with like placements. Like you will see like this wide placement will net you more like I would say in the range of 2 to 6 in terms of placements, while the other direction, you will bot 2 a bit more, but you will also win a lot more. Generally, right? Like obviously you can't.
No, I think that's. I would definitely, if we do get, I think me and you, Memo, are together on games 3 and 4. So if we can get Lutes in a lobby, I'll definitely bring up the prep stuff, because that's really cool. Like, I don't think I've ever had that kind of discussion before on the cast.
Actually, I shared a hotel room with them, and I was like, because I was letting him sleep at mine. I was like, "Yo, you're gonna prep me for the next GC for it," and then he did it, and I learned all about it. It's actually very interesting how he does it.
So you're committing to crimes on video?
What do you mean? It was a
Like
double
committing
room.
crimes?
It was a double room. Don't worry.
It's still like
I paid for 2
but
people.
for the Beherbergungs that you were doing, you were not allowed to let other people into your room and sleep there.
Don't worry. It was in game. It was in
Ah.
game. It was in game. Don't worry.
Oh, it was in game. Okay.
The I did want to bring
Okay,
up
but
for
shit talking aside.
Gluteus.
We can
I
get
was looking at that before and I was like, wait a second, he's not been at a unless I missed something here. He's not been at a regionals since he won his regionals. Like,
Yeah.
like it's 2021 the last time he was at a regionals, and like him to be coming back this strongly in this set is crazy.
Yeah, there was a lot of different reasons for it, I guess. Like he was away for like half a year. I think he was in Vietnam, and also he I think a lot of like work stuff. So he just didn't have the time. I think he played TFT. Like he didn't quit
Also-
completely. But yeah.
Motivation. Like he didn't like a lot of the recent sets that much, so it was
Yeah.
kind of like whipping it. And then in general, I don't think he's like super serious like about the game.
Yeah, I feel like it's so hard for these people that will go to Worlds, have like a strong Worlds performance, then come back and like motivate themselves to do it all over again. Because you know how much hard work they put in. Like I can only imagine how many hours they put in to get to that level. And
I mean,
yeah.
also usually you just don't have the time, like to do it like most people.
Over and over.
Because
Yeah.
like, you will need to focus on your job, education, family, whatever.
Yep.
So would you say that like actually knowing how much work it takes to get to Worlds is hard to get over once you've done it, because you know
Yeah.
you actually have the perspective?
I can say for myself, right? Because I when I made like top 8 at regionals, I've put in a reasonable amount of work, and I knew that to like consistently perform and like at a higher level, I would need to put in more work. And for me, that was kind of like, how am I reasonably gonna do that consistently? It's like it's not feasible unless I like quit my job, which is not an option.
Yep.
So I think it's quite a high impact on most players. Like if you know how much work you actually need to do, like if you can kind of like gauge the effort, it becomes a bit off-putting. And I know for me personally, like the next 1.5, 2 sets, I was basically knowing how much I would need to do demotivated me so much that I didn't do anything at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the impression I'm getting as well from most people, and that's like one of the problems that I had myself as well as a player. Knowing how much work you put in to get to a certain level, and then doing it all over again for the next set, for the next season of competition, right? I think it's just a very big factor of these guys' motivation and why we see so many people fall off. Yeah, or why we see some people just take a set off, right? Like for example, there's so many people on this list that I know didn't play for like a set competitive or like for a few sets. For example, like Little Bit Pro quit after set 9, I think.
No, he did a semester abroad in Korea, so.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, but I think there's just like a lot of these cases like where people are really good. Like Zula, for example, another good example. It's like there's so many good players that could perform or like could play at this level, but it's just so draining and the payoff is not quite as high. That yeah, you will see some of these players just take a break for a set or two.
Yeah, well, that's another really good topic that I'm definitely going to bring up on GSC, because you know, I think just having those kind of discussions on the cast is really cool, because we just don't discuss it very often. And having
I feel like it should be highlighted more, because for most players it is the reality that they have to balance more things with the game, and it's not like you can focus full time on the game. It's just like there are a select few players that can do that, but that's not the norm. And I feel like it's something that should be talked about more often, because I think like being able to efficiently like coordinate all things you have going on in your life, and then have like efficient and effective practice routines is like what's really important for like being successful, like long term. But no one's really talking about that. It's more like people tend to like overwork themselves
Yeah, they're kind of brute
rather
forcing
than
it.
just actually thinking about how to like get everything together and make it sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good idea, like talking about that, because it feels like that's where esports stuff goes more, longer term is it's just trying to make it a more sustainable thing, even if you don't necessarily you're not necessarily the best
because
player in the world.
I'm going to be honest, from my POV, I don't see a world where there is enough money in the scene that you can get rid of this problem by people being able to quit their jobs or their education.
Yeah.
So like the other solution would be to like then like not invest the time, but there will always be some people that do invest the time, and then you can like not catch up reasonably. So it's also the problem doesn't go away.
Yes, there's always going to be someone who can brute force more raw prep than you.
Like for me, we kind of used the tier list that Solo Gesang is using, right? And he can put in the time he puts in the time to create this tier list, which is like a really, really, really good work. But it's like so much effort that it's like, for outside of him, I don't think there would be like people even capable of doing it to that degree with so much detail. Like this whole like on top of streaming and playing, right? Like this is like such an enormous commitment that I don't think like people could reasonably contest him on that line of work, I would say.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I did it during PB for 2 weeks and it was miserable. Like I was miserable. I was doing like so many hours. And yeah. Keeping it updated from day to day. It's just crazy. Like the amount of work that guy puts into the game. I don't know how he has like work-life balance even. Like I don't think it's reasonable to put that much time into a game that, like, if you're not a big streamer, it's just not reasonable to put that much time into this craft right now. Unless you're just unless it just fulfills you.
All right. I don't want to keep you guys too much long because I'm worried that we're getting to like an hour and a half. But is there like a last person you want to highlight in terms of like either just them or like the kind of the type of player they are?
I'll show you go. I already mentioned so many people.
Well, I wanna say that people should put Ellen on Fraud Watch.
Okay, interesting.
But that's just because I like to trash talk him.
All right, I mean that's your prerogative,
And
absolutely.
then to make you excited, Peter, I do think that Squirrel Pie, for example, is a name I've seen popping up more recently, also like on a higher level. So
yeah, he's been doing really well.
Yeah, I'll see. Maybe he'll have like a bit more of a breakout performance there as well.
Okay.
And then, well, he kind of performed. He's like, I think he's leading in GSC points so far. But Azu is for me like for the last 1.5 sets, he kind of stands out as being like a person that's really he likes to put in the work, and he's actually doing the work. So I think that's like kind of impressive. So like I didn't know his name like 1.5 sets ago, but I think the guy managed in a short amount of time to establish himself as a player that can compete, and I think that's quite impressive.
All right, nice, cool. Well, in that case, I think that's all I can reasonably ask. Well, you've been both being extremely generous with your time. I don't want to keep you any longer, but I'm just gonna throw up your Twitter handles on here and hopefully make them actually readable. If people would like to come support you, just for anyone who did make it this far, I don't know if either of you guys want to like just pitch your streams for anyone who might be inclined to come and learn from your learning trees.
Yeah, sure. It's /Loescher. You probably can't spell it from me saying it if you're English Speaking person.
Sorry, it's on the
But
screen at the moment, so it should be okay.
Oh, well, if you can read, then you're lucky enough. Otherwise, you're screwed. So good luck with that.
Do you stream
So yeah,
in
I'll try
bilingual?
and stream a bit more again in the next times. But when I'm on, drop by. Just feel free to drop a message and then also ask me to talk English. I'm willing to do it.
Okay, yes, I'm assuming this is going to be the case with both of you, that it will be like primarily German, but if someone like asks something in English, that you'll respond in English.
Actually, I mostly
I
stream in English now.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah. Who was gonna go? Loescher?
No.
Oh.
All right,
Yeah,
Memo,
guys,
well, how about you?
and you guys can find me on the Memo TFT 00. Thanks for watching this, and yeah, see you guys
Yeah,
watching.
just check for your stream. Is it Memo with 4 O's on Twitch as well?
No.
Oh no.
It's only 2 O's.
Just randomize the number of O's. And you'll find it
Just
eventually.
write Memo TFT
Just keep
like with
adding
1 O.
O's or taking away O's until eventually you get there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Yeah. Well, I'll try and get this up probably tomorrow. But yeah. Well, it should be fun to see how things work out in a GSC 3. Thank you guys so much, and I'm gonna stop recording now. Whee!